is wrapped 360 degrees around it.
Go! Hustle! Hustle!
Hold it right here. We're fine.
You don't need to be a meteorologist to chase storms in the United States. If you want the thrill of witnessing a twister without the risky calculations, and you know the science of it all, just join a storm chasing tour. Because, yes, they exist. Or, more like they thrive in the heart of Tornado Alley, like Oklahoma. Tempest Tours is one of the top storm chasing tour providers in the United States. And on May 31st, 2013, their tour group ventured to what they knew could potentially be a once-in-a-lifetime storm chase. All the ingredients were pointing to a large tornado, something far more intense than boring EF0s or EF1s that typically happen in the area. The tour group parked 4 miles south of I-40 and 7 miles west of US 81 on the side of the road. Minutes later, their location turned out to be the perfect tornado watching spot, as they witnessed a massive funnel touch down.
After a minute or two, it was apparent that we had to get out of the way, so I had the group get in the vans and we blasted south.
Go! Hustle! Hustle! Loose! Hurry up! Go!
At first, it was a breathtaking and surreal experience. Probably made some tour joiners think that the $3,000 tour was way worth the price. But then, the tornado looked stagnant, like it wasn't moving. That's when the tour leaders realized what was brewing in front of them was heading straight for their tour group. So, just a minute away from being in a deadly position, the Tempest Tours van fled, joining the traffic jam and madness that put hundreds of storm chasers at risk. This was an abnormal tornado that threw all their safety protocols and training down the drain. By the end of this chase of a lifetime, there were 8 fatalities, including 4 experienced storm chasers, and over 150 people were injured. May 2013 was a particularly tornado-active month for Oklahoma, with 63 tornadoes confirmed to have touched down stateside. And though most of them were EF0s or EF1s, there were also several high-end, violent twisters that touched down during this time. On the 19th of the month, an EF4 tornado killed 2 and injured dozens in Shawnee, Oklahoma. And the very next day, on May 20th, came the history-making Moore EF5 tornado, which killed 24 and injured 212 people. Oklahoma was constantly in a fragile state of grieving and recovery. But unfortunately, on the last day of May 2013, all the weather conditions were hinting that the month's tornado frenzy was still far from over. Here's how Tim Samaras, a respected storm chaser featured on the National Geographic Channel, described the May 31st weather setup during a call with the network.
Boy, the ingredients are coming together for a pretty volatile day.
Tim Samaras was on the ground to deploy his custom-built scientific probes, alongside his son, Paul Samaras, and longtime colleague, Carl Young. Together, they formed the TWISTEX team, and their mission was to gather data from inside tornadoes, using instruments Tim had personally designed, all in the name of advancing science and public safety. It was risky, yes, but TWISTEX wasn't the only group willing to take the risk. Also on the ground were hundreds of storm chasers, researchers, and media crews, all trying to capture what was shaping up to be an unforgettable chase day. Of course, tornado chasing tours were also spawning left and right. Everyone knew a significant tornado was likely to form. All the atmosphere needed was one spark, and that spark would ignite a volatile mix of ingredients already simmering over the Central Plains. And the best part? This wasn't your everyday tornado setup. Remember, the region had already been battered by rounds of severe weather in the days leading up to May 31st. Those left behind a washed-out outflow boundary, a leftover feature from earlier storms, which boosts low-level wind shear, encourages rotation, and creates a boundary zone where new storms can easily ignite. Then, of course, there was ample moisture. Deep, rich Gulf air pushed Oklahoma dew points into the upper 60s to low 70s. That kind of moisture is fuel for thunderstorms, especially when it mixes with daytime heating. Instability was also through the roof, with CAPE measuring as high as 5,000 joules per kilogram in some areas. Lastly, there was an incredibly strong wind shear that gave the supercells their spinning motion. The Storm Prediction Center recognized how volatile the setup was becoming. On May 30th, they issued a Day 2 moderate risk, and by the morning of May 31st, that warning zone included much of central Oklahoma. At around 4:50 p.m. of May 31st, when El Reno was already packed with chasers, Tim Samaras tweeted an ominous message that would eventually be his last ever tweet.
RFD is wrapped 360 degrees around it.
And at around 5 p.m., these storms started to slowly merge into one giant complex. The storm on the southernmost part, in particular, was becoming the dominant cell, tapping into the atmospheric ingredients much more efficiently. About an hour later, just after 6 p.m., an ominous wall cloud had formed, spotted and captured by many storm chasers. This was a sign that a tornado is very likely to touch down.
Look at that. Holy cow.
By 6:02 p.m., the first funnel of the El Reno tornado appears. This tornado is clearly a multi-vortex twister, which means it's strong and very dangerous. Storm chasers on the ground captured funnels dipping and rising, circling each other, and gaining strength in real time. Twins and even quadruplet vortices appear within seconds in some instances. You could hear the excitement and adrenaline in some of the chasers' videos.
Guys, that's it. Right there. Look at that monster. This is a huge tornado.
After all, what could be more of a sense of accomplishment for a chaser than documenting a rare, massive tornado up close? But soon after, that excitement would turn to fear. As the subvortices began to merge into the main funnel, the tornado's movement became erratic. Tempest Tours was still observing at this point, mesmerized by what they saw in the distance. Video shows tourists watching the tornado from afar, while a photographer captures once-in-a-lifetime shots. Then came the realization the tornado wasn't moving east or northeast like it was supposed to. It was just hovering, which to a trained eye meant it was actually coming straight toward them. Rapid successions of honks rang out, and panicked tourists rush back to the van. Everyone leaves immediately. If the group had waited just 60 seconds longer, some of them may not have made it out safely at all.
Get in now. Get in now. Get around now. Shut that door.
Tempest Tours wasn't the only one that was put at risk by this unexpected tornado path. Most, if not all, storm chasers in the area expected to see the twister move from west to east, or more specifically, from the southwest to the northeast. Because of this, most of the storm chasers positioned themselves to the south of where the tornado was expected to touch down. But now that the tornado is moving southeast, almost everyone's safety has been thrown into jeopardy. And the worst part was, this wasn't just 2 or 3 cars trying to escape at the same time. Hundreds of storm-chasing vehicles tried to escape all at once, at the very hour civilians typically drive home from work. Roads were flooded with heavy traffic as people panicked to get out of the way of this massive, unpredictable tornado. Brett Wright and Brandon Sullivan recorded the very moments they fled from the storm in a panicked state. Initially, the two held on to the belief that they were probably in a relatively safe spot.
Oh my gosh. Debris! Debris!
It's coming up. That whole thing's coming up.
This could be a defining moment in their storm-chasing career, so they tried to stay calm despite the violent winds that were drawing closer. But within seconds, that confidence gave way to terror. The tornado was now coming straight toward them. They yanked their tripods from the ground, threw their gear into the car, and floored the accelerator, heading due south in a last-ditch effort to escape.
That same exact moment that I realized we're in trouble.
But with the tornado going the same direction, they were caught by the outward rim of the circulation. Debris after debris. Their car gets struck repeatedly by metal sheets, tree limbs, and even a hay bale that's on fire. Brett and Brandon miraculously survived the encounter, but this was just the beginning of Tim Samaras' team's fatal encounter with the El Reno tornado. Unlike chasers, who at this point had decided to stay clear of the storm, Tim Samaras still had one goal: to plant pods in the tornado's path and hopefully record critical data. So, he directly chased the twister. At this point, the El Reno tornado had lasted about 7 minutes, traveling over 2 miles. The tornado was already more than a mile wide, massive compared to typical twisters. But there was some good news. Many storm chasers had already repositioned into safer locations, until the tornado, once again, made an unpredictable and sudden U-turn, and headed northeast this time. This unexpected shift put the lives of storm chasers Mikey Gribble and Matt Gultel, as well as the TWISTEX team, in immediate danger. It didn't take long before these chasers found themselves inside the tornado's expanding inflow winds, without them realizing it. Here's what Mikey and Matt were seeing at this very moment.
We're driving down Reformatory Road. The tornado is out to our west, just off my right side as we're driving south, and it's racing us to the intersection southeast. And right over my head is the tornado, just incredible violent motion in the clouds angling up over our heads.
But the narrow, visible funnel on this video was not the tornado itself. It was only the condensed portion of the twister. In reality, the entire tornado was far wider. In fact, its chaotic invisible winds were already encompassing Mikey and Matt's vehicle. And so, the impact happened. Their windows were shattered by the force of the wind, rock, and dust, their camera recording the entire encounter in real time. Eventually, they managed to pull clear of the tornado, at least temporarily. Along the road, Mikey and Matt encountered a police roadblock that closed their initially planned escape route, forcing them to turn left from Highway 81 onto 29th Street. Perhaps this detour was the burnt toast that saved their lives, because the twister, which was now moving at about 40 miles per hour and nearly 2 miles wide, was heading straight to Highway 81.
In the last 7 minutes, the storm has veered from south to northeast. It's now taking dead aim at Highway 81.
Highway 81 was the road everyone had been banking on as their escape route. It was wide, paved, familiar, but by 6:18 p.m., this very same escape route was completely swallowed by what was now the largest tornado ever recorded, 2.6 miles wide and moving at nearly 60 miles an hour. The minutes that followed would soon become known as the most lethal storm chasing event in history. Up ahead along the highway, a crew from the Weather Channel had a life or death choice to make: go north and try to flank the storm, or head south and try to outrun it. They chose south.
We are made up of a convoy of 3 vehicles.
The convoy consisted of 3 vehicles. The lead car was driven by Kevin Parrish. Behind him were Mike Betts, Austin Anderson, and Brad Reynolds in what they called the Bettsmobile, an SUV operated by Mike Betts, hence the name. At the back of the line was a satellite truck. Minutes later, they realized they may have made the wrong turn. Hidden behind the wall of rain surrounding them were monstrous subvortices, each as wide as a football field, orbiting the main funnel. Kevin and the rest of the convoy slammed the gas, or at least, they tried to. In seconds, Kevin's vehicle was airborne, lifted a foot or two off the ground. The Bettsmobile, which was supposed to be behind him, passed by his left side, launched by the air at that very same moment. A 2.5-ton Suburban lifted off the highway and spiraled like a toy before vanishing 20 or 30 feet into the air. Sounds unreal, but it all happened. In fact, through Kevin's camera, you could see how the Bettsmobile, with 3 people inside, was simply rolled away like paper. During those moments, with his car totaled and slammed onto the ground, Kevin Parrish kept repeating to himself, "You're not going home in a plastic bag."
I'm there and I'm talking. You're not going home in a plastic bag. You're not going home in a plastic bag.
Somehow, against all odds, everyone in the Weather Channel convoy survived. But the tornado's wrath, and the roads filled with storm chasers, was far from over. A baseball-sized hail slammed into the surrounding areas. The tornado continued tracking northeast. It's now 6:19 p.m., and the tornado is 2.6 miles wide, its peak width. Directly in its path were Dan Robinson and the TWISTEX team, led by Tim Samaras. TWISTEX's goal from the very start was to drop the pods and get out of the way. And even when nearly everyone else had decided it was too dangerous to continue their chase, the TWISTEX team made one last attempt to intercept the storm and deploy their probes, heading east. What welcomed TWISTEX and the nearby chasers was an eerie calm, as their cars headed to an area that had no rain. Or at least, that's how it was, for the first few seconds. Suddenly, raindrops fell, then downpour, then chaos. By 6:22 p.m., the TWISTEX team and Dan Robinson, who was slightly ahead, started to be engulfed by the tornado. First, there was heavy rain, followed by gnashing winds. Winds powered up to 120 miles per hour. Dan was able to floor his accelerator, narrowly escaping the tornado. But the TWISTEX team, which was just seconds behind him, never reappeared from the storm. Their small, white Chevy Cobalt simply didn't have any chance against a tornado whose subvortices winds reached up to 290 miles per hour. A patrol officer from the Oklahoma Highway Patrol later revealed the last transmission heard from the TWISTEX vehicle. "We're going to die, we're going to die." After striking the TWISTEX team, the tornado continued to follow an erratic path, one that curved, expanded, and reversed unexpectedly. And in doing so, at least 4 more times, it caught more storm chasers and civilians off guard, costing them their lives. All of this storm-chasing chaos happened in rural El Reno, an area with only a few homes and scattered farms. But the fear had already spread to the nearby metropolitan cities, where panic was just starting to set in. The brewing anxiety eventually escalated into chaos when KFOR chief meteorologist Mike Morgan said this on live television.
I would recommend going southbound. You need to part the water with this. Bethany, War Acres, all the way down to the airport. I'd go southbound, do it now. This is South Oklahoma City. You folks need to be, if you can go south right now, if you don't feel safe, go south.
Tens of thousands of residents, still recovering and deeply traumatized from the EF5 Moore tornado that struck just 11 days earlier, rushed onto the roads trying to flee this El Reno twister. In doing so, they unknowingly created a traffic trap that stretched for miles along gridlocked highways and back roads, directly in the path of the tornado. Luckily, the tornado never reached the heart of Oklahoma City or the traffic-jammed highways surrounding it. If it did, it could have gone down not just as the widest tornado in history, but also the most lethal in the United States. However, unfortunately, it did claim the lives of a mother and her 17-day-old baby as it swept through the outskirts. May 31st, 2013 was supposed to be just another awesome chase day for many of these tornado chasers. It was supposed to be a day of groundbreaking research for scientists like Tim Samaras, too. But unfortunately, what was supposed to be the thrilling chase of a lifetime became the final chase of some of these storm enthusiasts. This tornado passed through mostly unpopulated areas of Oklahoma, but it was still deadly enough to claim the lives of 8 people, 4 of whom were storm chasers: Tim Samaras, Paul Samaras, Carl Young, and Richard Henderson, who was in a separate vehicle. Their deaths marked the first time storm chasers were killed during a tornado. and they will forever be remembered as dedicated scientists and researchers who risked their lives for all of us to better understand severe weather. The tornado at its peak contained wind speeds of up to 296 miles per hour by the Doppler radar data and had a width of 2.6 miles. It was the widest tornado ever recorded, but even so, it eventually only received an EF3 rating from the National Weather Service. Or more precisely, it was initially rated an EF5, but was later downgraded to an EF3. The Enhanced Fujita Scale, though the most popularly used to determine how strong tornadoes are, rates them based on the maximum damage observed, rather than the actual recorded intensity. Since the Reno tornado traveled through open fields, only damaging relatively weak structures and vehicles, there was simply no opportunity for it to produce EF5 level damage, even when it recorded winds stronger than the more EF5 tornado that struck a week prior. For quite some time, and even now occasionally, there's still debate about whether El Reno should be referred to as an EF5 or EF3 among tornado watchers. But regardless of how it's labeled, this doesn't change the fact that the El Reno tornado was a deadly, chaotic wedge that will go down in history as the scariest, maze-like run of any storm chaser's life. It killed 8 people, injured 151, and was shockingly erratic, constantly shifting directions, something almost unheard of for a tornado of that size.